So let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Your Vote Matters webinar. And yes, it does. So my name is R.C. Sehgal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Synergies Work. Synergies Work is a nonprofit organization committed to economic empowerment of people with disabilities. We inspire people to find their talents, use their talents and ideas to turn it into businesses, and connect them to resources, people, and opportunities. In other words, we are an organization that takes people from unemployment to entrepreneurship. And more importantly, I'm also a mother to two sons, and my youngest son, Angad, has Down syndrome. And this year, he is going to be casting his vote for the first time. And now I know that he has all the legal rights to go and cast his vote, the mom in me was scared because I did not see him reflected in the various conversations that were happening around voting in this country. And I was wondering, what if somebody questions his right to cast the vote there on the day of the poll? And that took me to the broader question, are the voting places accessible to people with physical disabilities? Or what about people with low vision or who are blind? And that's the reason why I wanted to bring this group together, bring in disability leaders and people from the state office to have a conversation on what are the rights, how is voting accessible, and how do we get people to vote today. So I'm really grateful to all of you for joining us today, and to our diverse panelists for making the time and sharing their experiences, tips, and information. We have with us today Vincenzo Piscopo, who is the Community and Stakeholders Director at the Coca-Cola Company. We have Janet Lebrec, who is the founder of Synergy Consulting Company and the ex-commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration at the federal level. Charlie Miller, who's the Legislative Advocacy Director at the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and most importantly, Chris Harvey, who is the Elections Director for the Georgia State's Office. Yeah, so thank you so much. This event is going to be moderated by two of my favorite people, Karen Hunter and Mina Hong. Karen sits on the board of Synergies Work, runs her own management consulting firm, and Mina Hong also sits on the board of Synergies Work. She is retired from the Shepherd Center as the supervisor for peer support supervisor, and she's a versatile artist. Helping us in this entire event as the First Sign News, who are making ASL interpretation and closed captioning available. A couple of ground rules and tech housekeeping. One and the most important part of this conversation is that this is a nonpartisan conversation. We have gathered this group together to make sure that everybody knows what their rights are and what are their voting plans. Second, if you are on a smartphone and you want to have a better view, just swipe your screen towards the left. It's always better to use the landscape mode rather than the portrait mode to get a better view of the people. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available to everyone after the event, and it will be put up on our website. We'll also be mailing it to all of you. Finally, I know there'll be a lot of questions today. So put in your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will take these questions as the talk happens. Plus, we have 5 minutes reserved at the end of the webinar to take up the question and answers. In case your question is not answered, make sure your email is there so that we can get back to you with the answer. Having said that, I'm going to turn this over to Mina Hong, who's going to take over from me.
Good morning. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm a little bit louder than RT, aren't I? I put on Come on for today. I'm gonna put some blush on, so I enjoy my face because it doesn't look like this every day. Anyways, it's an exciting time for us and an important time for us to exercise our right to vote. And I feel extremely privileged that I get the opportunity to interview two wonderful experts in their own disabilities to describe their voting experience along with some of the things that they have learned personally without spending time to go directly into the question. And because our disability is so broad and wide, I wanted to respectfully ask our speakers to self-identify their disability when they're answering this question. Partly because we're on Zoom, like we can only see the top part of us, right? Because I'm a wheelchair user and you wouldn't be able to know, but I wanted to make sure that we keep the spirit of ADA alive, that nothing about us without us is always at the center of our discussion. So I wanted to make sure that that was in place. So my first question will be to Enzo Piscopo, and he will have 5 minutes, and Janet will have 5 minutes, and the questions will be the same. So the first one is to Enzo. How was your voting experience been during the last election? And for Enzo, because you have an acquired injury, I'd like to know if your experience in the voting booth has been different, before and after becoming a wheelchair user. And secondly, why is voting important to you? And the same questions will be asked of Janet.
Well, thank you so much, Mina, for the questions. And thank you so much, Synergy Works, for inviting me and for all the amazing work that you guys do. I'm a full-time wheelchair user. I have a spinal cord injury that I acquired 10 years ago. And so I have navigated the two worlds, the world of being an able-bodied and the world of being a wheelchair user. What I can tell you for how it has changed is that before my injury, voting was something that I took for granted, that I just went and voted, and that was it. When you get an injury and that and you are used to the many occasions where places are not accessible, and you become very useful, very accustomed to surprises, but also you become very accustomed to actually proactively avoid surprises. The biggest change for me when I became a paraplegic and voting was that I had to do my research first. So I had to call the polling station first to make sure that they are accessible. And and at one point even I drove by the location to make sure that it looked that it was going to be accessible for me. And that's a very good point here that I want to emphasize. My experience has been that you might call the polling center or any places where you are assessing if they're accessible, and they might tell you, yeah, absolutely, it's totally accessible, come in, and then you get there and you say, wow, how do I get there? So that's why you really have to be very proactive. I had to be very proactive. I am very proactive. I take the time before to make sure that the place is accessible. I call the polling center, and I do that to all the places that I go, and then go and vote. One thing, though, that I want to make sure that I also share is that although I have been always, that creates some sort of anxiety, because you don't know what you're going to face. One of the things that I have learned is that generally, based on my experience, in the polling centers, they will make it work for you. And that's very important because the point there is that don't be scared. They will help you because it's your right. It's not something that you're doing for fun. It's a right that you have. So even, if you are afraid that the place is not going to be as accessible as you wish it to be, don't worry. just go there and make sure that they see you and make sure that they hear you, because you have all the rights. You have the right to exercise your vote. So that's that's the answer to my first question. Mina, do you want me to go straight to the second question, or should we
Yes,
go?
please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So why is it important to vote? It's interesting because voting has been always important for me, right? Because that's the way, that's my opportunity to express how I want my rights to be protected, how are my values to be protected. When I became a paraplegic, this became even more important, because one of the things that I have learned since I became a wheelchair user is that I am accountable for fighting for my own rights. If I don't do it, if I don't show it, if I don't do it, very likely it's not going to get done, right? So I have to fight for my own rights. And the most effective way to make sure that your rights are protected, that your voice is heard, is through voting. And that is a big responsibility. It's a big responsibility for me as a person, but it's also a great responsibility for me being part of this community. And having said that, for me, it's extremely important, and that's something that I encourage all my fellow members of the disability community, is do your research, right? So make sure you research your local, the local authorities that you're going to be voting for, and all the way to the Congress, all the way to the president. Do the research, go to their websites, check their websites, make sure that first of all, make sure that they have you top of mind, right? So, that's one of the things that I do, is I go to their website, and if I don't see disability anywhere there in their narrative, that's a big flag for me. So I do that research, and I make sure that they are aligned to what needs to happen for me to make sure that I can be an active member of society, that my rights are always respected and protected. So it's a huge responsibility. And when I became a paraplegic, it even became a bigger responsibility, because, the line between being able to be active in society and not being active in society is very thin. And if that line is interrupted, it can affect me, it can affect my family, but it can affect my community in general. So I have become more aware of my responsibility as a citizen.
Thank you very much, Enzo. And to save time, I'm just going to go directly to Janet. So if you can answer those two questions for me, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here this morning to talk about this important topic, particularly since we are coming up to an election. It is extremely important to get out and vote and exercise your right to vote. As an individual who is blind, I learned very early on about the challenges that I faced with having to do something like voting. The challenges begin with trying to do your research with regard to the candidates that you are anticipating on voting, and trying to acquire that information that is so important to understand what the position of various candidates are in your respective communities, both locally as well as nationally. So the challenges when you are either blind or low vision really start with accessing the information, the material, whether it's printed or whether it's electronic, but also it was really important for me to want to go to the voting poll, because it's an activity that everyone who exercises their right to vote gets to experience. And I've always looked forward to that opportunity to go out into my community and cast my vote the same way that everyone else does. Fortunately, with technology today and the advances in technology, individuals who are blind or low vision have the opportunity to execute their vote by using accessible voting machines to be able to cast our vote independently. but that is really dependent upon the voting poll, whether or not that equipment, first of all, is there, whether or not it's operable, and whether or not those the individuals at the polling stations have been trained adequately to be able to instruct or at least provide some level of guidance about the equipment. I think that going to the second question, I think that why it's important to vote really does reflect back to the civil rights era and having the right to vote and exercise that right to vote for the disability community. In 2018, the American Institute for Research actually conducted a study called The Hidden Buying Power of the Disability Community. And that study was very interesting because it does demonstrate the economic buying power of the disability community nationally. And that is important when you think about what that means when you're exercising your right to vote, that the political forces understand that we are a community that has a voice, collective voice, but also we have economic buying power. Collectively, the disability community, particularly among working age adults, when they are employed, have a non-discretional tax contribution to this country, and economic buying power of $450 billion collectively. So that's an important, certainly important data point to recognize and to take seriously for our elected officials in this country. It is really, really important to be able to understand how our votes actually impact our ability to have a voice at the table and a seat at the table when we are talking about policies, when we were talking about making laws that absolutely impact the estimated 56 million individuals in this country with disabilities. So exercising your right to vote really has an impact at the local level, the state level, as well as the national level, in every aspect that we as individuals with disabilities depend on, whether we're talking about employment, whether we're talking about participating in activities in our respective communities, whether we're talking about transportation, the funds that get allocated to those particular areas have a direct impact on the disability community, and particularly healthcare. The disability community collectively has a vested interest in healthcare issues as well as employment, because those two particular areas impact us nationally as a community. So it really is critical for people to get out and exercise their right to vote, as well as making sure that they're clear and understanding what the issues are that do impact our community.
Thank you so much, Janet. And we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to pass it to Ms. Karen Hunter, but it really is important for our disability community to be seen. With the buying power we have, we can't be swept under the rug, and the best way for us to show our buying power is to cast your vote. So thank you, and now I pass it to Ms. Karen Hunter.
So I'm going to be talking today with two people that I'm really excited to have with us. First, we have Chris Harvey, who is the elections director for the Secretary of State's office. And Chris has been working tirelessly for months now on getting the election put together. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Great.
I lost myself for a second, but
I know. So, so first off, I just want to throw out there, early voting starts on Monday, so I'm sure there's a lot going on. How are things going, and what's going to be happening in the run-up over the next day or so?
Wow, yeah, advanced voting starts on Monday, and we've got 3 weeks of advanced voting. Most county, the law requires that every county have voting during regular business hours. The law requires every county to offer Saturday voting on the second Saturday, so not this coming, not tomorrow, but following Saturday polls have to be open. Many counties, especially the large counties, are going to offer Saturday and Sunday voting. So I would encourage everyone to check with your specific county and find out where and when you can vote in advance, because you've got 3 weeks to do it. And I was on an interview earlier this week, and I said, I'm hoping that people will start to look at voting more like a season than a day. And you don't start your Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go to the mall and hope to get it done. Some people do because they have to, or that's their thing, but have a chance to vote during 3 weeks of advance or mail it in, why wouldn't you? So, but yeah, things are very busy. We're working with 159 counties. Everybody's working extremely hard. There's no question that this has been a year unlike any other for everyone, and certainly no different in elections. But I'm really, really proud of the way the county election officials and the average people that work the polls have stepped up and responded to the challenge. And we're doing everything we can at the Secretary of State's office to keep up with them.
Well, I think it's a really good point. There are several different avenues for voting. So you want to just talk really briefly about how those are going to happen and the timelines for those activities? Sure, yeah. And the first way to vote that's actually available now and has been available for a couple of weeks is by mail. Anybody in Georgia, for any reason or no reason at all, can request an absentee ballot be mailed to their house or their address or their P.O. box or whatever. You mark a ballot by hand by filling out the ovals. You put it in an envelope and you mail it back to your county, or a new thing in Georgia this year is you can drop it in a county drop box. So counties have secure drop boxes throughout the county. You can drop it in there. You don't have to worry about a stamp. You don't have to pay for postage. It's picked up every day. And if you're worried about the mail, you're worried about the postal system, drop it in a county drop box. The second way to vote is during advance voting, like I mentioned. For the next 3 weeks, every county has to have at least one polling place where they offer advance voting. Now, Fulton County, for example, is having, I want to say between, I don't have the exact number, but about 30 different places within the county. The larger the county, the more places they have. During advance voting, you can go to any county advance voting location and vote. And you got 3 weeks to do that. On election day, you must go to your assigned polling place and vote there. So those are the three options. And I'll point out that advance in-person and election day voting they always have accessible voting equipment, and every polling place in the state is required to be handicapped accessible. I know Vincenzo was talking about, checking with it. And I certainly don't oppose anybody checking and would encourage people to do what they want to do, but it's a requirement of the law that polling places have to be accessible. And that includes screen reading devices as well, correct? For people who are visually impaired or blind?
Well, the state election board has passed a rule that, an exception to the rule that allows people to use a screen reading device, a cell phone or a tablet or something like that to verify your ballot. Great.
We do have a couple of questions I just want to run through. So Monday is technically a holiday, though a lot of companies here in Georgia don't take it. But polls are open, correct?
The polls are open in most places. The law does allow that if a county is not open, advance voting has to take place during normal business hours. If a county were to be closed, they would be exempt from that. I don't believe there are a ton of counties that observe Columbus Day, and I think even many that do are going to offer voting anyway. But again, check with your specific county. But my understanding is all the major metro counties are going to have voting on Monday.
And then one other question that came in, if somebody's in line and the poll during early voting, during the time that polls close, would they still be allowed to vote, or would they need to come back another day?
The law doesn't really address that. It addresses it on election day, where if you're in line, you can vote. I've never heard of anyone being sent away when the polls close. I think they would generally say, okay, more people can join the line. I've never heard of anyone who's already in line saying you got to come back tomorrow.
Great. So I know you've been having a lot of these conversations about voting for the disabled communities. What kinds of questions do you get from other presentations?
People are concerned about if they want to have assistance. The goal, and I understand the goal for members of the disability community is to vote independently, completely independently, and I know that's the goal in most cases. I want to make sure that people understand if for whatever reason they're concerned about that, anybody with a disability is entitled to have somebody assist them. And the assisting can mean anything the voter wants it to be. Some people think, well, I have to be able to touch the screen myself, or I have to be able to handle the ballot. If somebody is legally assisting a voter, and if you're receiving assistance, the person assisting has to sign a form acknowledging they're assisting you, but they can do anything you want them to do. So if you want them to touch the screen, if you want them to take the ballot, if you want them to hand it to put it in the scanner, those are all things they can help you with. So while the goal, I think, for a lot of people is to vote independently, they're certainly entitled to assistance, and they can choose who they want to assist them. If they want to bring a family member, friend, they can do that. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that everybody who has a disability, and any kind of disability, you don't have to prove your disability. You don't have to say what your disability is. You just say, I have a disability and I want assistance. Here's this person who's going to assist me. They sign the form and you go vote. So those are the most questions I have, and people do get concerned about the different equipment that's available. While every polling place is supposed to be accessible, every once in a while we come across some minor glitch that comes up. There was a place in Fulton County that for every couple of years they had, and I don't remember where it is, but they had like one of these little elevators that went up like 2 steps, and about every third election, somebody would forget to get the key to that. So while it is an accessible location, if somebody doesn't get the key, guess what? It's not. So little things like that will come up, and we do our best to work with the counties and make sure that they cover all those things before they happen. And it really is everyone's goal for everyone to vote as best they can.
So if people do go to the polls and they do see issues like the key isn't available or the accessibility door isn't open, what are their options? What should they do?
They need to make sure immediately that they get a hold of somebody working the polls, the poll manager or one of the poll officials, and get that issue resolved. Because if it's a problem for them, it's going to be a problem for the next person that comes up and needs that access or accessibility. So they certainly need to let somebody know. And then, depending on what the situation is, the poll officials will have to work with them to make sure they vote. In some cases, they found an alternate way around that. In some cases, they use paper ballots. You can use paper ballots, which are less accessible in many cases, but there are ways to work around that. And then if you come across a persistent problem, let our office know. Contact the Secretary of State's office or your county election office and say, hey, I had a bad experience here. The reality is that all the poll workers practically they're paid, but they're practically volunteers. They're trying to do a good job. But there are individual situations that can come up and throw a curveball at somebody can be tough. And so you try to work with them.
Yeah, what I'm hearing both from Enzo and Janet and from you feels like plan ahead, know what your expectations are and what your rights are. Probably go in with the numbers that you need for either the county or the Secretary of State's office if you need to call. And I know a lot of companies are participating in either time to vote or other programs where they're giving people extra time off. We know the lines are going to be a little bit long this year. There's a really high turnout expectation. So just planning for a little extra time is going to be helpful as well. So my last question for you, Chris, is what other advice would you offer, not just to this community, but just in general as you're thinking about going in to vote?
I think what I would say, given all the different circumstances we're facing, I've heard a lot of people talking about a vote plan. And at first I thought, oh, gosh, that's kind of weird. I mean, you go in and you cast your vote and you leave. How much of a plan do you need? But then you think about, again, whether it's accessibility, whether it's transportation, whether it's medical condition, all these things and huge turnout in a very volatile, politically charged environment really make this an election like any we've had in modern times. And so I think the idea of everybody sort of looking at their own situation and saying, hey, this makes most sense to me. I voted by mail, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and I signed up for ballot tracks and I got a text saying, hey, my ballot has been accepted by DeKalb County. So I'm good. My vote's in the can, or at least in the ballot box. So I'm done. My wife and my son is in college. They're going to vote. My oldest daughter wants to vote in person and she's going to vote during advance voting. Look at the locations for advanced voting. You may find out that one's only 3 blocks away from where you work and you can run over there at lunch break on a Tuesday at 4 o'clock where the lines are short and you can get in and out in 2 minutes. Whereas if you wait till election day, you're going to be with a bunch of your friends and neighbors that, you know, you may rather be doing something else. So with the options we have and the opportunities for voting, really look at what works best for you. I would say, kind of like they do at the airlines, if you think you're going to need a little bit of extra help or time or assistance or something like that, really consider advance voting. It tends to be less crowded. They tend to have more flexibility. There's longer time to solve problems. And the bottom line is, if there is some insurmountable problem, there's always tomorrow. If you wait until election day, once 7 o'clock comes and you haven't voted, you turn into a pumpkin, and there's no way to get that back. So we certainly want everyone to have a smooth experience, and we want everything to go well. The fact is, with 159 counties, 2,500 polling places, a largely volunteer staff, in a pandemic with a new voting system, why wait until the last minute?
And how many voters are you expecting?
Well, total turnout, we're expecting over 5 million. And we're hoping, the numbers, we're hoping about 1.5 million by mail. We're hoping maybe 2 million during advance voting, and that would leave, 1.5 to 2 on election day.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to thank you so much. We're going to come back with a couple of questions during Q&A. This has been super informative. Really, really appreciate all the information. I'm going to turn this over to Charlie Miller at this point. So Charlie is a Georgia native and a disability advocate, and his love of politics and passion for inclusion have led him to head up the legislative advocacy at the Georgia Center for Developmental Disabilities. Hey, Charlie, how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing okay. Thank y'all for having me on.
Hey, so tell us, what's your disability and why is this conversation important to you?
Yeah, so to start, I have a cerebral palsy, and I have been using my chair, I would say since I was about 14 years old. And one of the things that I have really learned about voting and really exercising my rights is everyone wants to make sure your voice is heard. One of the best ways to have your voice heard is to get out and vote, because that is one of the most powerful things we have in the United States to use to make sure our voices are heard.
So talk to me about what the Georgia Center for Developmental Disabilities, the GCDD, is doing to help voters. Yes,
so we have actually, one of the many cool things that we do is that we make sure that folks understand the issues and then understand who to call if there is an emergency or something going wrong. So I will let y'all know right now, I take zero credit for knowing all this. One of the best things my old boss has taught me is it's not about knowing all the answers. It's about knowing the people that can answer the answers. So we have teamed up with the Georgia Advocacy Office, Rev Up Georgia, and a couple other great organizations to help, one, make sure everyone knows the issues. And actually in our October magazine, we're going to have a whole idea of where folks stand on issues and how people can be prepared to vote. And then also, and I believe I just saw it dropped in the chat. Thanks, Dana. You are awesome. One of the other things it is a N&R piece that we've produced to really break it down from the voting issues and how to understand a candidate from their issues, all the way down to you're at the polling place, it's inaccessible. What do we do now? As I like to say, sometimes you got to break the emergency glass, and you got to make sure you can advocate the right ways.
That's awesome. It's also, we've heard a lot of this already in the conversation today. I mean, it's an incredibly complicated election cycle. There are some There's some bills up for vote that are, you know, we all want to try to understand a little bit better. You know, the wording's always a little interesting there. What's your strategy for understanding who you're going to vote for and how you're going to approach voting?
Yeah. So one thing that I think has been mentioned on this many times already is doing your research, doing your due diligence to make sure you understand what folks that are running are standing on the issues. And actually, there have been some really great disability organizations that have asked questions to candidates, asking specific disability issues, what issues are important to them, and then how do all these issues intertwine with the disability community. One thing I have learned, and GCDD, Georgia Council of Developmental Disabilities, has been really kind of pushing out now, is that disability, the idea of disability can be in every policy. So it doesn't need to be, this is a disability issue. No. Disability is everyone's issue. So we want to make sure that everyone understands that one, folks with disabilities are important and they have the right to vote, obviously. And then second, anytime you're getting into that polling place, you want to make sure you're understanding where the candidates are sitting on whichever issue. And then if a candidate does not have disability issues in their website or whatever it may be, always feel free to reach out to the candidate.
That's a really, really great point. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone, because the candidates expect to have these conversations and have these tough questions come at them. And many of them may not even think about how the disabled community is weaved into some of the platforms that they have. So I think that's a really, really great point. So we've got a wide variety of people on the call today. I know we have a number of people from the disabled community, but we also have people who are poll volunteers or who are simply supporters of the community. What would you like them to know about how the people who are not disabled, how to help people who are disabled vote, or what can they do to help support the disabled community as they go in to vote?
That's a really good question. One thing that I have learned and really kind of just talking with my neighbors is I need to bring it to their level. I need to make sure they understand it's not just a Charlie issue. It's not just whoever else. I know someone said Shepherd Center, so I'm going to call them out. It's not just a Shepherd Center issue. It's not just a GCDD issue. It's everyone's issue. One thing that I have learned, having a disability is one of the only minorities you can get into at any point in your lifetime. And that's why disability issues aren't just for that one person, one for me, one for whoever. It's for everyone, because once we include everyone in the picture, then we're really able to understand how we can help everyone out, but then also how we can make sure everyone has the right to vote. And then I saw in the chat someone asked a question about when you're voting and you are coming during a certain time, you don't have to stand in line. And I just want to say that is correct. The times for that is between 9:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. So if you have a disability, you can go up to the front and say, "Hey, I'm here to vote. I have a disability," and they should let you go right ahead.
That's great, Charlie. Thank you very much for answering that question, which is a really important one. And to Chris's point, because many of the poll workers are volunteers, they're doing their best, but you might want to go in with the documentation that shows that this is my right to vote during these hours. So just making sure you're going in informed is really important. Hey, so what are you excited about, Charlie, in this voting cycle?
What am I excited about? Honestly, there's so much that is going on in this voting cycle that is going to be really affecting the whole country, the whole community. Georgia, I mean, it is, we are on the verge of really making great changes in the country. And I'm really excited to be a part of that and cast my ballot for whoever I think is the right one. I will say one thing that I want to make sure that everyone understands. If you are voting and you have a voting issue, do not, I repeat, do not let anyone tell you you cannot vote. My golly, you need to sit down or stand up, whatever is easiest. Sit down, stand up, make a scene, call GAO, Georgia Advocacy Office, call GCDD, call your mama, call your grandma, whoever it is. Never allow someone to take away your right to vote.
Thank you, Charlie. That's a great way to wrap up this conversation. So appreciate having you here and having your voice with us.
Thank y'all very much.
So with that, let's take up some questions that are coming up. I know the panel has been answering and these questions as we are going, but there's still some questions that I'd like to bring them up. There is a question that I have from Diana. Will screen reading devices be available at polling locations during early voting? I think, Chris, could you address that question?
Yeah, it is our goal to have that happen. We are still trying to identify a solution that's going to make that happen. I don't know, I can't promise that it's going to be available Monday morning for everybody. We wanted that to happen. When we started this year, that was one of our goals, and we've gotten, bounced around like a pinball a little bit since then. I've lost some time. We're working. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with somebody this afternoon to go over some options and see what we can get. But I wish I could say that's definitely going to be the case. I can't say that right now. But again, anyone who has a device is able to use that to assist them in reviewing the ballot.
I just want to chime in that I've been working tirelessly with Chris for the last couple of weeks on this issue, and he knows I've been a real fly in his ointment. But he really is very genuinely trying to make this happen, and there's a lot of complexity to both the equipment and the system. So the best efforts are being made.
Thank you.
If I could just for a second, and this may not be, but I want to just expand on what Charlie said right at the end, if I could, about voting if you have a problem. Everyone needs to remember the term, and write this down if you have to, provisional ballot. If you're told you're not registered, if you're told you've already voted, if you're told they can't find you, if whatever, you can always ask to vote a provisional ballot. And that will be a paper ballot that will be, you'll vote it, and they'll set it aside and determine what the problem is later. So I agree 100% with what Charlie said. Don't take no for an answer. But it'll be helpful if you use the word provisional ballot, because that'll make a light bulb go off in their head. And first, it'll say, this person knows what they're talking about. And two, it'll let them know exactly what they need to do legally. And that's federal and state law. So thank you, Charlie, for highlighting that.
That's great. So I have one more question here from Danny, the limit of number of people that may be assisted by one individual supporter for a voting cycle has been 10 people. I heard this limit has been waived. Can you please address this?
There is no more limit. That was a previous law that has been vacated. There is no limit to the number of people you can assist. It used to be that you could assist an unlimited number in federal elections, only 10 in a local election. Now there are no limits to anybody. One person could assist as many voters as they physically could. Okay.
So people have asked questions in the chat box, and there are a lot of links that have been shared in the chat box. So if you want to use those links to answer those questions, I think we answered most of the questions here.
So if I could also clarify that Actually, Saturday, October 24th is the mandatory day for Saturday voting. So Saturday, October 24th is the day when every county has to offer voting, I think from 9 a.m. until 4 or 4:30 p.m. That's usually a very undervoted day. So again, that may be a good opportunity if somebody needs extra time or doesn't like crowds or is worried about exposure. That would be probably the lowest tide in terms of crowds at a polling place is that Saturday.
So that's it, like Saturday, October 24th. That's the day you do. There's one more question and then I will finish it off. I think you've answered this, but can a person with a disability bring more than one person into the polling booth with them for assistance? A question from Ali Maxwell.
No, just one, but any person you want, but just one.
Okay, there we are.
And we did have a question from Melissa Bowen about asking to share the link to the information about individuals going to the front of the line. We will get that link. We'll also share the link to ballot tracks and to the Secretary of State's office so you can see where your early polling locations are. And we'll send all of that out as a recap.
Okay, that's it. So with that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, and to Chris, Charlie, Enzo, Janet, for making your experiences, your information and tips available to us, for your time. Thank you very much, Karen and Nina, for making this event happen. And of course, a huge shout out to Georgia Advocacy Office for making this webinar accessible. And in the end, I'd like to sum up with just one thought, that it is not who you vote matters, but remember that what matters is what happens in the world as a result of that vote. So go ahead and vote, please. That's all we want. Thank you again very much. And I'll be sending out the recording of this event, the links, etc., to everybody here. So have a good day and a great voting year.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.